invest is incentives. If the incentives are wrong, no matter how much you invest into the problem, the money is going to be lost. And let me give you one specific example. There are many countries now that are being faced by international financial turmoil, and they are using the international reserves to counteract the effect of that while using fixed exchange rate regimes. Now this is what will happen, and we have seen this in the past, is that they will run out of reserves in this attempt of defending the exchange rate, the fixed exchange rate. So they will use a massive amounts of money, even billions of dollars, and they will lose them all in defending the wrong incentive, the wrong policy. So it would be better then to change the regime, to make exchange rate flexible, and to provide different incentives for participants in the international financial markets. So in that case, our advice is change the policy, change the incentives, and save the money. I can see that there is also a gentleman that had a question on transparency and corruption, and I can see that this is an issue that is very relevant in many countries. It may be very relevant in this part of the world, and we all feel frustrated when governments act in a way that is actually predatory or that exploitative, instead of providing these public goods and the public safety that they should. Now, the approach we take in the report is that the civil society and the private sector can challenge governments into action. And I think you have seen this in this area of the world recently. And I believe that governments, because of these challenges that are constantly produced by the civil society and the private sector, are becoming better. Maybe I am just too optimistic, but I do see that there is a positive trend in terms of how responsive governments are to the needs of the population and how accountable they are for their actions. I come from a region in the world, from Latin America, where corruption and red tape was the norm, and governments were really just instruments for a few minorities to obtain most of the gains from the economy. But from that region, we also saw, starting in the 1990s, a very strong program of structural reforms, of more participation of the private sector, and of streamlining government functions. That has created economies that are very different. Not only economies, but actually governments that are very different. They still suffer from red tape, they still suffer from corruption, but the improvement cannot be denied. And I am hopeful that that will be the case also for other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Dr. Hani Nawi. I'm a strategic management module leader at DOE, British University in Egypt. And thank you very much for the report, but again, I'm raising the question of it should be part of a comprehensive strategic management system with how to measure and so on. Because at the moment, even for our government, we don't have that comprehensive system, we don't have transparent system, we don't have key performance indicators and so on. So lack of transparency all the time. And obviously, if you look at the international indicators, Egypt right at the bottom at the moment in education, basic education, I think the competitive index, we are number 148 out of 148, in basic education, and so on. So unless you measure it, you cannot manage it. And that's the whole idea. It should be part of a comprehensive, total system, so that you can have the transparent, and then you can have the right actions, and really be able to evaluate even the ministers and the government and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm from the World Food Program here in Egypt. Thank you very much for this very succinct and interesting, the way it was presented, I thought was very, very good. I particularly wanted to kind of highlight and raise the attention of the part where the cost of the prevention is much less than what it costs, and especially where it comes to nutrition. And we could see that nutrition interventions are very, very costly, whereas if we were to follow proper nutrition awareness, for example, it would cost much less, but it would bring us where we want. I think you're aware, as World Food Programme, we did the cost of hunger in Egypt, which was launched last June. And it showed you how much percentage of GDP is being lost on the rise in the chronic malnutrition, which has now reached 30, and it used to be 23. Before that it was 19. So from 19 to 23 to 30, the rate just shows how the various shocks from 2005 till today has made this drastic, let's say, deterioration. And this kind of highlights it because it's a major risk, I think, and there is an opportunity if we could just move on and raise the awareness on that, because it does come from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You raised the question of the opportunity cost, in fact.
Yes.
So, but the human capital, which is lost. Very interesting.
2.9 billion is being lost.
Extremely interesting, of course. Questions, comments?
Well, I would like to thank you very much for the comprehensive and thought-provoking presentation. And I wonder if I can hear your opinion about what is going on in Egypt now. How can Egypt conciliate risk management and opportunities for development with the situation we are living in, these successive waves of revolution?
Anyone?
Thank you for this very extensive and comprehensive report. I would like just to highlight the two issues that I was trying to find in this article. It's about the situation of good governance and the relevance of the good governance here in developing countries to this report. The second issue about your observation about the basic compliance, that government administrations, NGOs comply at least to the legislative system. We have a big gap in terms of governance and compliance. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
على ما اعتقد ختامها مسك، انا هقول المداخله بالعربي
اتفضل.
لو كان ممكن تسمع.
اتفضل.
انا حسين الناظر، انا مذيع بالاذاعه ومدير تحرير مجله إديت4 باللغه العربيه. انا سعيد جدا بان التقرير بيتناول باسره أنا سعيد بأن التقرير بيتناول بأسرة كمكون صغير جدا إلى جانب الشركات الكبرى إلى جانب الحكومات. لكن هناك تحديات كثيرة جدا بتواجه الأسر في العالم النامي، منها الجهل، نسبة الأمية متفشية، مستوى التعليم متدني، حتى التعليم في المستوى العالي. يعني عندنا التعليم ركيك جدا في الدول العالم النامي، عندنا احنا في مصر التعليم في مراحل متدنية جدا بالنسبة للمستوى العالمي. إدارة الذات، إدارة الوقت، إدارة المخاطر قد تكون بعيدة تماما عن الإنسان في العالم النامي في مصر تحديدا. يعني حتى على مستوى الشركات، مثلا عندنا الشركات العائلية، عندنا الشركات الصغيرة والمتوسطة بتعاني من أزمات شديدة جدا، هم بعيدون تماما عن مفهوم إدارة المخاطر. هناك إفلاس، هناك مشكلات في السوق، هناك مشكلات في التمويل، مشكلات في التسويق. يعني الكل بيعاني من مشكلات ومن مخاطر وصعوبات، ويفقدون النو هاو كيفية تجاوز هذه المخاطر. حتى الحكومه نفسها ومؤسساتها قد تكون بعيده تماما عن مساعده هؤلاء وتقديم الدعم سواء للاسر او للافراد او حتى للشركات الانتربرينورز الصغيره والمتوسطه يعني. شكرا لكم.
اتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيد عارف حزب النور، اقترح ان يسبق الثلاث مراحل اللي خاصه باداره المخاطر يكون في مرحله توقع المخاطر. يعني انا ما اقدرش اكون مستعد لكل المخاطر واجهز نفسي لكل المخاطر من الناحيه الاستعداديه بتكلفه عاليه. كل بيئه لها مخاطر متوقعه، فلازم احدد المخاطر المتوقعه للبيئه اللي انا موجود فيها. الحاجة الثانية، في مخاطر بقى بتبقى موجودة من صنع البشر، وهي المخاطر والأزمات اللي بتلي الثورات أو بصفة خاصة ثورات الربيع العربي. فهناك مخاطر خاصة بأزمات سياسية واقتصادية في المراحل الانتقالية اللي ما بعد الثورات، وخصوصا إن الدول بتهتم بالوضع السياسي أكثر منها باهتمامها بالوضع الاقتصادي، على الرغم من أن المخرج من الأزمة السياسية يبدأ بحلول اقتصادية. فده أمر إحنا برضه عايزين نتطرق إليه. فما بعد الثورات ايضا بيكون في هناك ازمه ما بين ايادي مرتعشه للمسؤولين في اتخاذ القرارات الاصلاحيه والخروج من الازمه، وفي نفس الوقت بنحتاج لتعديلات تشريعيه علشان نقضي على البيروقراطيه، ودي معادله يعني بنحتاج ان احنا نوفق ما بين اطرافها. شكرا.
I'd like to apologize that I arrived late. I had another commitment. My name is Randa Fouad, and I'm heading a media NGO, which is the Arab Media Forum for Environment and Development. When I got the invitation, it was very interesting for me to come and I thought it was very interesting to come and attend and see about the issue of risk management and opportunities for development. My question here, I don't know if it was raised or not, but the role of the media in managing or preventing being part of risk management and prevention of crises. As to put it in practicality, as a journalist, we are facing a very serious situation here in Egypt, and we have the media who is part of the media is playing a controversial role. Part of it is, you know, some are analytical and some are biased. So where would you put this sector, very important sector all around the world now, the media and communication, in risk management and the opportunities? Thank you.
I don't see any hands.
اسمي إيمان صالح من باحثة بالجهاز المركزي للتعبئة العامة والإحصاء. سؤالي إيمان صالح باحثة من الجهاز المركزي للتعبئة العامة والإحصاء. طبعا شكرا على البرزنتيشن، كانت يعني مفيدة بالنسبة لنا جدا، وكانت بتعرض العديد من الحاجات اللي تهم مصر في الوضع الحالي. أنا سؤالي في ظل الأزمات اللي بتعدي بيها مصر حاليا، إيه أقصر وأفضل طرق لإن إحنا نعدي الأزمات اللي إحنا بتمر بيها مصر، خاصة إن مصر بلد غنية جدا بمواردها ضعيفة جدا في إدارتها، فإيه الطريق الأمثل لإن إحنا نعدي جزء من الأزمات اللي بتعانيها مصر؟ شكرا.
I would just comment on a few of them, and then Norman will maybe say a bit more. But I particularly wanted to say something on the question of nutrition, because I spent quite a bit of time looking at these studies that are comparing the costs and benefits of risk management And when I was talking in the presentation, I gave this example that if you treat malnutrition, then the costs that are avoided are much larger. But you know, when you look at these studies, those are the direct benefits. By avoiding those costs, that's the direct benefit. But there are also indirect benefits that you can really improve your productivity and work better and have a better quality of life from those nutritional interventions. And I think this is a more general point about the benefits of risk management may be even larger than you think if you think about these indirect benefits. And there are strong link with the opportunity side, because it can allow you not be sick, but also to work better. And so there's a sort of a win-win there in terms of risk management. The other question that really struck me was the one about how to anticipate risks, sort of before they happen. And I think Norman was rushing at the end of his presentation a bit, and he missed one of the slides that was the question of how to create institutions to manage risks. And we have an interesting discussion on the report on who should be involved in these institutions. And there are tensions between having too many of one type and too many of the other type, but we think there's a very interesting interface between having technical experts who have really the knowledge and who can help you anticipate those risks through having scientific knowledge, but also combining that with policymakers who may be able to think about how to apply that knowledge for policy to help people. So I think that's an important aspect of institutional design for risk management.
I think this is the graph that Kyla was referring to, where we think that the National Risk Board should be composed of both independent experts but also policymakers, and it should have an advisory role but also an implementation role. And the idea is to obtain some sort of equilibrium between being relevant, being credible, being legitimate, and having enough expertise. There were many questions, but I think they coincide on a couple of issues. One of them has to do with the role of information and transparency. We think that is that when we say that knowledge is the first component of risk management, we are claiming that this is not only what every individual can learn on her own. Actually, we are giving a very important role here for large groups, large communities, and particularly to the government, in providing correct information for people to assess their risks. So without this proper information, then there is very little that one can do that is effective. And let me give you one example. For those of you who are macroeconomists, you know how important the national account statistics are. Having correct knowledge about GDP, the forecasts on output by different sectors, having a correct knowledge and information on inflation rates and interest rates and so on. Well, there are some countries that unfortunately mask that information. Instead of revealing it, actually they obscure the information and now actually even present wrong information. One of those examples is Argentina, that according to official statistics has only 10% inflation rate, but according to unofficial statistics, more correct statistics, the inflation rate is 3 times as high. So in that circumstance, clearly the government is not helping the population deal with day-to-day risks that have to do with job loss, with new enterprises, new initiatives, and also participation in financial markets. So we think that providing information to construct, to build knowledge and diminish uncertainty is a critical role that governments should take. So that's one point. the role of information and how governments can contribute. Number two is on the fact that our report, indeed, as the gentleman from I think one of the NGOs or maybe the media said, it is people-based. That is, our focus here, our main concern is how can people do better in managing risk. And we see whatever happens to the larger groups, from enterprises to governments, as being only instrumental in helping people manage risk better. So we are not, in this report at least, not really concerned about specific enterprises or about specific banks or even specific governments. What we really want is to understand how can these systems, from the community to the international, local community to the international community, how can they contribute to people address better the risks that they face. And the last point that I also see common in many of your remarks has to do with political failure. And I understand that we are in Egypt, of course. There was a revolution, there was another revolution, and the political climate is quite delicate. And I understand that how you can feel uneasy with the process. In the report, we do say that political stability and macroeconomic stability are prerequisites for a society to prosper. So if we cannot give you a magic bullet or a silver bullet to achieve political stability, we can at least give you the hope that what we have seen in other countries is that in fact political stability is becoming more and more prevalent around the world. I think countries are converging towards a situation where governments are behaving, as I said before, in a more responsive and accountable way. And it is a very difficult process, but it is one that tends to converge towards a solution. So I'm sorry that we cannot give you more of a specific answer, but we do see that the private sector and the civil society can play a role in challenging governments in a peaceful way. And through that process is that governments become more accountable.
Prescription. This is a prescription.
Can I say two quick things? I wanted to actually, I think we missed the question on the media, and I wanted to say something about that because in our report, just to give you a quick summary, we have layers of different groups that are contributing to risk management, and one is the international community. But in this presentation, we didn't actually say what we mean by the international community. Of course, everybody thinks of the donors and the international organizations, but when you read that chapter on the international community, we also talk about international scientists or groups of scientists, also national and international media. These are all national but also greater than national level groups that are making a contribution, and in that sense we do think that the media has some contribution in raising awareness of risk and communicating that, although as you say there are tensions there, it's not easy. And I just wanted to end by sharing some sympathy with, I mean, Norman I think already tried to speak about this, about the difficult situation and here and the uncertainty about what will happen. And in my own country, South Africa, in 1 year we will be 20 years from when we had a massive change from a government that was only serving 10% of the population and a government that is now serving, is much more democratic and serving more people. There are still problems. Corruption is still a problem. The services are not there for everyone. But I just think that hopefully that over time things improve and become better. So good luck.
If there are no more questions, I think that Kyla has just put context. And I think that Norman also did that at the beginning. And I think we're very fortunate to have the two speakers from South Africa and Peru, from developing countries. And this is useful to realize that problems are not unique, that problems exist everywhere. South Africa is the most advanced country in Africa. It has the most diversified economy in Africa. It had a huge problem, existential problem, until the early 90s. It solved its existential problem, but its social problems are still around. Peru had extremely serious problems in the 1980s, political problems, the Shining Path, and other problems, and yet Peru could solve quite a few of its problems, not all of its problems. Peru also still has its problems. So I think it is useful for us to think that problems of development are shared, and that we are a developing country, and in thinking about our development problems, we should also think about other development problems, because we would benefit from their experiences, and they may benefit from ours. But I think the discussion has emphasized how every report, I think this is a lesson that once and again you learn, that when you have an international presentation about an issue of international importance, the audience translates it into the national level. The audience looks at it through national prism. And this is extremely important, because this is why reports of international character exist. And I think, for instance, concerns, Egyptian concerns, even when you raised the media concern, they were about Egyptian media concerns. The question of the politically induced crisis and risks. But what I found extremely interesting in the report and in your reply is that they broke down countries, they broke down international community. International community is not about states only, it's about the components of states. You talked about the private sector, about community, about media. So they constructed states into the actors at the national level and at the international level. And I think this is an approach which is extremely important and useful, because this is the reality of things. States, after all, are fictions that try to assert themselves, to confirm themselves, but the actors are at the local level, at the national level, at the transnational level. We are no longer what we were 100 years ago. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for bringing up this assertion, Norman, about the more protected people are, the more risks they are willing to take, and the more opportunities they can seize. I think this is a fundamental question. You want to have people feel safe, feel secure, in order for them to take up risks and to try to advance on the path of progress and development. Finally, you just mentioned, you said about change of policy, because policies, in fact, are not there to stay forever. One policy may be valid today, it may not be valid tomorrow. And Norman mentioned exchange rate policy in particular, and how defending a certain exchange rate could be extremely detrimental. In Egypt, we know something about that. In the last 3 years, we have gone through that, and this again is a lesson of critical. I would like to welcome my friend Edward Dahdah from the World Bank, who has joined us. We have cooperated in the past, and I hope that we will still be working. Okay, thank you very much to all, and thank you very much you're invited to have a cup of tea and coffee with us.
Thanks, Professor Awad. Thank you. Thank you a lot.